Hello, I'm Casey, and today I'm going to be making the delicious, the delicate sandwich cookie called a macaron. Over the past few years, I've been making these macaron cookies, and I've definitely had my fair share of failed attempts, but I've also had a great many successes. Over all the trial and errors, I think I've come up with a great little kit of techniques and tips that really help me ensure that I make one of the best macarons in my own home kitchen. Hopefully you're able to take some of these tips and tricks into your own kitchen and make these delicious cookies. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the ingredients that make up a macaron cookie. The first ingredient that I'm going to talk about is the almond flour. That's right, this cookie is gluten-free. There's no wheat in this cookie. It is all built around almond flour. And then the next biggest ingredient is sugar. After that, we also have a meringue that we whip up with egg whites, which is typically going to be the trickiest part of making your macaron cookie. So looking at the actual cookies that we're going to be making with that almond flour base, we have the dry ingredients, which is just almond flour and powdered sugar. That's all that goes into the dry ingredients. And then the wet ingredients would be some cane sugar and egg whites to make up a meringue. For pretty much any type of baking that I do, I am going to weigh my ingredients, and this cookie, since it is so temperamental, is something that I would definitely recommend weighing your ingredients for. So a lot of recipes call for ultra fine almond powder. I do not have that. I just have regular, not almond powder, but almond flour. And we need 140 grams of that. So since I don't have the ultra fine stuff, I'm not even gonna bother with sifting it. I know that's kind of like sacrilegious when you're talking about macarons, but I'm not gonna sift my ingredients. I'm gonna do something else that I'll show you later on. Now I'm gonna do 125 grams of powdered sugar. 125. Instead of sifting, I'm just gonna take a whisk and really incorporate all these two ingredients together. While I'm incorporating them and whisking it, it's taking out the large lumps and clumps that are in there. And it's really making it a lot less coarse. The almond flour that I get, it's too coarse to go through my sifter, so it's just so much extra work, honestly. So I'm just going to whisk pretty well and make sure I have no clumps while I'm whisking. If you want to sift, definitely go for it. Usually people sift it 2 to 3 times just to make sure everything is incorporated as well as sifted through. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more in depth about meringues and what it is actually made up of. It's made up of egg whites, and egg whites are made up of proteins. So when we're whisking those egg whites up and introducing a lot of air into it, we're stretching the protein, and we want to make sure those proteins don't collapse on themselves. One way that they can collapse is when there is fat introduced or at all present within the whole process. So you have to be very careful when you separate your eggs. You don't want any egg yolk to get in there because egg yolk is fat. So once you have all your egg whites, the next thing is you're going to be dumping it into your stand mixer bowl. I make a lot of different things with my stand mixer. I just made brioche, which has a lot of butter that goes into it, and I want to make sure this is good and clean. I've already cleaned it, but I'm also going to be cleaning it with some distilled vinegar just to make sure I kill and get rid of all the fat that may be present within the bowl as well as the whisk attachment. And I am just going to clean the inside of my bowl, and I'll also wash it out with a quick rinse of water just so there's no vinegary flavor left behind. And then I am going to take that rag and clean the tines of my wire whisk. Just again, make sure there is no fat present at all, because if there is a little ounce of fat anywhere, your meringue is not going to whip up. We need equal parts egg white as well as cane sugar. So it's 110 grams of egg whites and then 110 grams of cane sugar. Aged egg whites is usually the best type of eggs for a meringue. I separated and weighed out my egg whites a few days ago, and then I just covered them in plastic wrap and just let them age on my counter for the past 2 or 3 days, and now I have aged egg whites. The reason why you do that is all for the protein. It just creates a stronger protein. Since we're going to be incorporating the sugar into the egg white, sometimes I do prefer using like baker sugar, which is just like really ultra fine sugar. Granules are really fine, and then it makes me feel like they're incorporating into the egg whites even better, and so it's not grainy. But I don't have that today. I'm just going to be using the regular cane sugar that I have. This is a little bit coarser than other cane sugars that I come across, but it still incorporates just fine into the meringue, and so I'm really not worried about it. There's one more ingredient that I'm going to be using. It's called cream of tartar, and you're just using a pinch of this. You do not have to use this if you do not want, but this is another reassurance that your meringue will actually hold, so I'm definitely going to use it. The order of this whole process is you dump in the egg whites, and then you just use a pinch of the cream of tartar. I'm just doing, I guess it's 1/16 of a tablespoon, or teaspoon, 1/16 of a teaspoon. This is an eighth, and I just did half of that. And we start whisking this up kind of on a medium low until you see white bubbles form. So you see how it's just covered in white bubbles? That's exactly what we want before we introduce the sugar. So I'm gonna crank this on and just slowly add in the sugar. Okay, let's see how they're doing. We want stiffer peaks. It's definitely getting nice and glossy. I am going to whip it just a little bit more. But you do not want to over whip it because then it can break your eggs. Okay, so I did it for maybe just another like 30 seconds. And that is looking good, nice and stiff and glossy. Okay, so I have the 2 parts of my macaron cookie. We have the almond flour and the powdered sugar, and then we have the meringue. So now we have to combine these 2. We have to do that by folding them in. So let's just I just pour it all into the meringue, and then we do a folding technique where you go around and then you bring everything on top. So you go around the bowl and then you bring it up on top, and you just do that until everything is incorporated and we achieve macaronage. Macaronage is a certain step in the macaron making process where the batter is exactly how it needs to be, and the test for that is by testing to see if your batter can make a figure 8. So once we get to the macaronage step, I will show you what it looks like. I've been folding my ingredients together for about a minute now, and I haven't achieved macaronage yet, but I am going to have my macarons be color, so I'm going to add my food coloring and food gel in now, and while I'm still folding, I'm going to be mixing in that color as well, because you don't want to achieve macaronage and then have to add your coloring afterwards and continue to fold it, because then it's just going to make the batter looser and looser. Right now we are trying to achieve a very specific batter and the viscosity of it, because we want to be able to pipe out our macaron cookies and kind of have them fall on the cookie sheet but still maintain their shape. If it's too loose, it will just go into a puddle. We don't want that. We want it to hold its shape. So we don't want to fold too much, but we do have to fold just enough. So that is why I'm going to be adding my food coloring in now, and then I'm going to continue mixing my ingredients to achieve that macaronage consistency. And now, since I have that in there, I'm going to continue folding these ingredients together to achieve just the right consistency. You know you achieved the right consistency once you do this and you can create a figure 8 in your batter. I'm almost there. And I haven't been mixing these ingredients for too long. Look, I'm there. So it didn't take me too long to get the right consistency, and I'm glad I added in that food coloring when I did, because it's all mixed in there perfectly and it's the right consistency. I think all in all, I mixed for maybe 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes worth of folding and mixing. So you're not doing it for too long. I have a disposable piping bag, and I fit it with just a big tip. And now I'm just gonna fold that so none of the batter falls out, and then I'm going to put it in my little cup stander. So that is going to catch my batter. Since I don't have a silicone mat with already pre-drawn circles out, I just made my own. I have a wax piece of paper, and I drew circles of the size that I want, and then I'm just gonna make sure I flip that over so I don't get any of that ink on my cookie. And that is set up on 2 cookie sheets. They don't grow too much. Like I said, if it's the right consistency, they're gonna maintain its shape. They're not gonna spill out into a puddle. So you don't need to have too much spacing in between your macaron cookies. And after we pipe them out, we are gonna let them rest for about 30 to 45 minutes. And they're going to form kind of a skin. With that skin that's formed on top, that creates the little feet that when you cook them, the feet will kind of come out underneath the skin and create those little feet that the macaron cookies are really known for. And I'm gonna start by piping right in the center of the circle that I've drawn out, and then just lightly squeeze until the edges of my batter get to the lines that I've drawn. After everything has been piped out, now you have to smash it to start getting some of those air pockets, air bubbles up to the surface. You can see how some air bubbles have popped and some air bubbles are coming up to the surface. I'm gonna take a little pointed tool. You can also use like a little paring knife or something. And I'm going to pop any of those bubbles that I see. Popping any visible air bubbles is really gonna help prevent having a huge air pocket inside of your cookie shells. The batter is really going to settle in and it's going to smooth out. So I think I got all the air bubbles out, and now I just need to let them rest for 30 to 45 minutes and let them form that skin. And I'll show you what that looks like after they've rested. Okay, so while my macaron shells are resting before they go in the oven, I preheated my oven to 310 degrees. I made some macarons last week, and so I have some leftover filling. I made kind of like a strawberry cheesecake macaron last time. So it was just 100 grams of softened cream cheese and then 200 grams of powdered sugar that I mixed together. And then I did like maybe a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons, I don't remember, of the bon bon man jelly inside of it, and then I did tint it a color. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pipe a ring of filling, and then inside of that I'm gonna put a little bit more of the jelly inside. So when you take a bite of your macaron, you're gonna have a nice little jelly-filled surprise. So I think our cookies are ready to go into the preheated oven. I want to show you a little test. Like I said, it's going to form kind of like a skin on top, and that's how you know you're ready. So you can touch the cookie and no dough will come up. So you know that it's formed a skin and they're ready to go. Now, my first batch of macarons are inside the oven. They're going to be cooking for 15 to 18 minutes, depending on your oven. Typically, recipes will tell you halfway throughout the cooking process, rotate the baking sheet so you can get that even cooking on all of the cookies, but I don't do that. I know my oven well enough to know that there's not really hotter spots or cooler spots within the oven, and I found that I rather have them sit in there without rotating them, because once I open up my oven, so much hot air escapes that I have to like preheat my oven every single time I open it and close it. So I skip the rotation process. I think it works out just as well, but if you know your oven and you know that it has hotter spots within it, then definitely make sure you rotate halfway in between. 15 minutes is up, and I took my macaroons out. Actually, I baked them for another minute, so in total it was 16 minutes. So they've been cooling on the wire rack for just a little bit, and the nice thing about macaron cookies is once they cool off for maybe even just 5 minutes, they peel right off of whether you have a silicone pad or some wax paper. They come right off if they're cooked for the right amount of time. If you do underbake them, like this one, oh, there you go, they don't peel off or they don't peel off as easily. So you know that you've baked them for the right amount of time when they peel off like this. Now, some of my macarons aren't perfect, and I am okay with that. You can tell that some of them have some of the dimples from when I pop the holes, or even some of the almond flour. That's why you typically want to use like really fine almond flour. But I don't. I just have regular old almond flour that I use, and I am okay with these imperfections. I think it adds a little bit more charm to them. It's best to decorate the shells before you actually assemble the cookies. You'll just realize it's a lot easier. So I'm gonna start on that. I have my white chocolate here that I'm gonna melt, and then I'm going to put it in a piping bag, and I'll show you what type of decoration I put on top. I'm just going to do cute little swirls. So my macaron shells are all decorated and drying. My first batch is pretty much dried right now, so I'm going to pair them up. I want to try to find 2 shells that are like about the same size, and then those will make up one sandwich cookie. Okay, so I have all my cookies paired up, and now it's time for the filling. It is best for them to spend a night or a day inside the refrigerator to kind of soak up all that goodness, and to where the actual cookie shells kind of take on some of the moisture from the filling, and the bite is a lot smoother than if you were to bite into it right now. So you could still eat it, enjoy it the day of, and it'll still be a great cookie. But to get the full effect, you need to wait for like a day. Now you'll see that I'm kind of stepping in a little bit. I'm not piping my filling all the way to the edge, because when I close my cookie, I'm going to squish it down a little bit until that filling comes out to the edge. You certainly do not have to decorate both sides of the cookie like I have right here, but I like the added flair. Now into the fridge to enjoy tomorrow. And that's it. I hope this gave you a little bit of courage and a little bit of a push to try to make these beautiful cookies in your own kitchen. They really are not that hard to make. You don't need that many ingredients. You just need time and patience, and you yourself can have some delicious macarons at home as well. Buon appetito!